Good morning. My name is Flóra, Gulyás. I am the first author of the research paper called Bibliometric Analysis of Literature on Seaport-related emission inventories. I present my topic according to the following agenda. First, I give some background information regarding the objective and scope of our study. Then I will explain the methodology. The 4 research questions and the results are presented one by one. And finally, I conclude the outcomes and give a little outlook for further research. Air quality in Seaport is not a new topic since it is the #1 environmental priority since 2013. So in order to cut emissions from ships, the International Maritime Organization has adopted the MARPOL regulation. And with that, it is established so-called emission control areas to cut emissions. In these areas, ships are required to accomplish different emission limits, for example, concerning particulate matter. On a more local level, there are, of course, many different strategies how to reduce emissions, such as technical or organizational, and so on and so on. But to develop these sustainable strategies, it is necessary to understand where the emissions come from. A common approach to track emissions is to create an emission inventory. An emission inventory captures the emissions in a given area during a specified time period. There are 2 main methods to determine emissions, the top-down and the bottom-up. The Port of Los Angeles and Long Beach are creating emission inventory since 2005 on a yearly basis, but that is still not a widespread tool to use, although there is an urgent need. And also an overview of the related discussion within the scientific community is currently missing. To identify relevant research articles, a keyword-based database search using Web of Science has been conducted that included authors' keywords and abstracts. We were mainly searching for Seaport in different to the word of Seaport in different variation and emission, and of course inventories. So the articles were restricted to papers written in English, and for the time frame between 2005 and 2021. First, 228 papers were identified, but after exclusions and deeper screenings, only 79 were included. The analysis of the papers were primarily content-based, but part of the analysis was keyword-based and was carried out by viewer. The first research question addresses the geographic regions covered by the research related to seaport emission inventories. As we see it on the map, the focus lies on Asia, Europe, and North America. China had the most papers related. That it's not surprising considering the fact that a significant amount of the world's biggest ports reside in China. Reasons for Europe and North America can be the establishment of the before mentioned emission control areas. In addition, the Mediterranean seeks to establish such emission control area that explain the focus on this region. The second question looked at the emissions considered by the selected literature. We categorized the literature considering either air pollutants, greenhouse gases, or both. We see that there is a growing concern about air pollutants but also about the combination of both type of emissions. Air pollution has visible impacts such as respiratory diseases or direct environmental damages. Meanwhile, climate gases influence our life more on a global scale and have less directly visible impacts. And still, these less visible impacts caused by seaport activities are becoming increasingly relevant. The calculation methodologies used in the literature were mainly calculating the emissions on their own, and just part of the studies used existing results. The emissions in both cases were either measured or calculated. If measured, then either by a remote sensing monitoring station or sampled on board. If calculated, then some used top-down methodology, but most of them used bottom-up method and AES data. The results of the emission inventories were applied, for example, for air quality modeling or source apportionment or dispersion modeling or different other kind of assessments. The hot research topics discussed in the literature were analyzed through WOS Viewer. Looking at the most frequent keywords with the highest total link strengths, we see that the most common keywords are air pollution, ship emission, and particulate matter. The results show that scientific articles that refer and use the term of port-related emission inventories are still primarily concerned with ship emissions. Air pollution caused by marine traffic is an actual and a still growing concern. The emphasis lies on particulate matter, which is an ongoing issue, but both in terms of health impacts and air quality degradation in port cities. The emerging trends were based on the density of the keywords. We looked at the most recent keywords with the highest total link strengths and identified 4 keywords. Coastal city, low sulfur fuel, source apportionment, and urban area. The identified keywords indicate that the impact of marine emissions in heavily populated coastal areas needs further investigation. On one hand, this involves the use of low sulfur fuels, but also the method for identifying and allocating the exact emission sources. Researchers can benefit from an initial overview of seaport-related emission inventories concerning the geographical distribution, emission types, method, and current and emerging issues in the related literature. The experts from the industry can benefit from understanding the use of emission inventories when it comes to shape their emission reduction strategies in seaports. And finally, future research could concentrate on the role and impact of emission inventories in implementing emission reduction strategies at seaports, and also on emission sources other than ships, and could include regions such as Africa or South America. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. May we have the presenter? Yeah.
Yep.
Hi. Hi.
Yep.
Hello. Flóra.
Yep.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Thanks for joining
Hi.
us.
Good morning.
Hi. Yeah, it's a very early morning for you, right? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, that's a little bit early.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting study, I think. And now we have about 5 minutes for questions. Anyone? Yes, please.
Okay, thank you for the interesting presentation. Actually, I have one suggestion is when you are searching for the literature papers, right? I notice you are using the keywords of inventory and inventories, right? So I would suggest you can also add keywords like emission accounting, because some papers they use accounting instead of inventory, and some papers they don't even use the word accounting or inventory or inventories altogether. So they just call it like emissions import or port emissions. So just one suggestion. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you are completely right. I was facing this problem during my research. So at some point I tried to like make different combination also. Which one? I used some other keywords, but then I just like had a huge amount of literature, and at some point I couldn't handle it. So I just decided to focus and try to look at this specific keyword. But you are right. There are like papers who are not specifying inventory and are still conducting an inventory in their paper. So yeah, that's true.
Actually, from my understanding, there are papers using actually emission accounting. Accounting, that is another keyword I've been using. It's the same thing, yeah.
Okay, no, thank you very much. I take it for sure. So for the next research, yeah.
Hello. I have a small question as well for clarification. You mentioned seaport-related emission inventories. For seaport, that means do you focus on those emissions from ships in ports or on the terminals or both?
Yeah, so I wanted to have a kind of look at how this term is considered in the literature, and that part is kind of missing from my paper, but because it would be too big. But so my impression, or generally, it is like seaports are focusing the most on ships when it comes to emission inventory. So that's at least in the scientific literature. So there are like, of course, some papers considering ships and cargo handling equipment, or like some kind of combinations. But in most of the cases, when you end up with this term, then you find just considering the ships, and yeah, that should be actually a little bit broader, because if we look at Port of LA or Port of Long Beach, they are like making this really broad, really comprehensive emission inventory, where they are focusing not only on ships and cargo handling, but also on hinterground transportations.
Thanks. All right. Any other questions? Okay. And thanks a lot for joining us. So please stay with us for other presentations as well. Thank you. We put our hands together. Thank you.
Thank you very much.